Hello friends, welcome back. This is the 10th session of our Excel Functions series. The list presented here consists of all the functions that we aim to cover as part of this series. The green colored functions are covered in our earlier sessions. In this session, we will learn about lookup, VLOOKUP and Hlookup functions. Let us start with understanding the requirement or the problem statement. Mr. Ram asked Mr. Sham to meet him in his room. Mr. Ram, after the initial greetings, told Mr. Sham that during his last visit on a retail outlet, the billing team highlighted few challenges. They highlighted challenges in getting the product details, given that they have the unique item ID assigned to each item and each item is mapped to one and only one product ID. Mr. Ram requested Mr. Sham to look into this and suggest a solution for the challenge which the team is facing. Mr. Sham takes a note of the problem statement and assures Mr. Ram to get it fixed on priority. After the discussion, Mr. Sham moves towards his desk to start working on the problem statement. Before we move to our Excel sheet, let's first go through the definition of these functions that we will be using in this session. Starting with the function lookup. It looks up a value either from one row or from one column range or from an array. Next is VLOOKUP. It looks for the value in the leftmost column in the table and then returns the value in the same row from the specified column. Next is Hlookup. It looks for the value in the topmost row in the table or arrays and then returns the value in the same column from the row specified. Now we shall discuss about the data before we move towards our hands-on exercise. Also, we will try to understand the relationship between item and product. The inventory data or the sample product data which is shown here is same as it was in earlier sessions, only the product ID column is updated with new ID series for understanding and discussion purpose. Before this session, the product ID series started with ITID-1001. Now ITID has been replaced with product ID, and this is the only change in the inventory data or the sample product data when compared to the earlier sessions. Our data has product ID and each product ID present in the system gets captured here. Each product can have multiple items linked with it, and each item should only be linked to one and only one product ID. Now if we see the second picture here, it is sample item and product mapping. So one product can have multiple items, but one item should only be mapped to one product only. Let us take an example here. We can see that item ID 1001 is mapped to product ID 1001. Item ID 1002 and item ID 1003 both are mapped to the product ID 1002. An item cannot be mapped to multiple products. So we can say that product and item are in 1:n relationship, where one product can be mapped to multiple items represented by n here, but each item should only be mapped to one and only one product. So here we can see that one product can have two items, item 1 and item 2, but each item should have only one product, which in this example is the product 1. So item 1 and item 2 both are mapped to product 1, and they will not be mapped to any other product in the system. Now let's move to our Excel series workbook and understand these functions lookup, VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP in detail. This is our Excel series workbook, which contains the data such as inventory product data and the product ID and item ID mapping data. We will use these two data sheets to get the details of the item as requested by the stakeholder. Let's briefly discuss the data. The data sheet inventory product mapping helps in capturing the details of the product. Each unique product present in the system will have one and only one entry in this worksheet. The next worksheet is the product ID and item ID mapping details. This sheet captures the product ID for all the item IDs or items present in the system. It helps in mapping item IDs to their respective product IDs. Now, let us discuss and understand how lookup function can help us in getting the details of the items such as brand and category. To apply lookup, select the cell where you want to get the output, then press equal to, then enter the function name, which is lookup in our case, then enter the arguments as shown here. There are two approaches of passing the arguments inside the lookup function. In approach 1, 3 arguments are required to be passed, which are lookup value, lookup vector, and the result vector. In the second approach, we need to pass only 2 arguments. The first one is the lookup value and the second one is the array. We will first try to understand the approach 2 where we need to pass only 2 arguments. The first argument is the lookup value. In our case, lookup value is the item ID for which we want to fetch the details. The second argument is the array, and in our case that array is product ID and item ID mapping. Since the array has 2 columns, one is the item ID and second is the product ID. So item ID becomes our first column and product ID becomes our last column. The item ID, which is our lookup value, will be searched against the values present in the column 1 of the product ID and item ID mapping sheet. It then returns the corresponding value in the matched row from the last column. When we have passed both the arguments, then close the brackets and press enter. We can see that item ID 1001 has product ID 1001 mapped to it. Now we can extend this formula to the other item IDs as well. Just select the cell and double click here. We can see that each item ID present in column A is returning the product ID value to which they belong using the lookup function. We can fetch the details such as brand or category on similar lines using the lookup function. We understand from the data that brand and category are associated with the product ID. So to get the brand and category of the item ID, we will use the product ID as an input to our lookup function, and the input array will become inventory product data sheet starting from column B to column F. Now here the input array which we selected is this. So our first column is product ID and the last column is the brand. So the lookup value, which is the product ID, will be searched against the values present in the column B, that is the product ID column, and the value corresponding for the matched row in the column brand, which is the last column of our array, will be returned. Example, if the product ID is 1001 and the input array is column B to column F, then if there is a match, value present in the same row in column F will be returned, that is the Dairy India. So we have the output as Dairy India, which is the brand of the product ID 1001 and hence the brand of the item ID 1001. Now double click here to extend the formula for the other item IDs. Let us quickly cover the approach 1 of applying the lookup function, which means the approach where 3 arguments are required to be passed to get the final result. So here the lookup value, which in our case will be the product ID, then the lookup vector is a vector that consists of values against which the input lookup value has to be searched. The third argument is the result vector. So it is the vector from where the output has to be considered. In our case, the lookup value is column B2, which is the product ID. Then we have the first array as the inventory product data column B, which if we see the data is having the product IDs against which the input product ID can be searched for. And then we have the result vector, which is our output vector, which returns the value present in column D and the row number where the product ID is matched. Let us take an example from this table. This time we will consider the second row. Here we can see that B3 at row number 3 is our lookup value, and it will be searched against the values present in the inventory product data sheet in column B, and the output returned would be from the column D corresponding to the row number where the match was found. So we can see that product ID 1002 matches with the product ID of the input lookup value, and then the output vector, which is category in our case, is returned for the given matched row. In our case, product ID 1002 is returning milk, as milk is the product category for the product ID 1002 and item ID 1002. Now let us extend this formula for the other item IDs as well. And we are now able to fetch details such as product ID, brand and category for any given item ID using the lookup function. Now let us move to our next function, which is VLOOKUP. It is one of the most used function in Excel. Before we move ahead, let us revisit the function description of VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP looks for the value in the leftmost column of the table and returns the value in the same row from the specified column. V in the function name VLOOKUP stands for vertical. Hence, VLOOKUP performs vertical search only. Let us now move to the lookup and VLOOKUP worksheet and try to fetch the details of unit cost price and the brand name using the VLOOKUP functions. Here we have the item ID and its product ID present. Using this product ID and the VLOOKUP function, we should be able to fetch the asked parameters. Before we start with applying the VLOOKUP function, let us understand the arguments which are required to be passed in the VLOOKUP function. The VLOOKUP function requires the following arguments for a successful search of the given lookup value. starting with the argument 1, which is our lookup value. It is the value which you want to search for in a given array or a table. So this becomes our input value. The next argument is the table array. It is where the lookup function or search function will happen. Then we have the column index. It defines, in case of a match, which column's value has to be picked as an output. And then we have our last parameter, which gives us an option between exact match and approximate match. If you want exact match to happen, then keep the value of the last argument as false. If we want an approximate match, in that case, keep the value of the last argument as true. We can also pass 0 and 1. 0 stands for exact match and 1 stands for approximate match. So we can either pass true or false value, or we can pass 0 or 1 value. Now let us apply the VLOOKUP function in the column C and in the column D to understand it better. Starting with the column C, we can get the unit cost price for any given item ID using the product ID to which it is mapped and the VLOOKUP function. To apply VLOOKUP function in a given cell, double click the cell, enter equal to, then enter the function name, which is VLOOKUP in our case, and then pass the arguments. Our first argument is the lookup value. In our case, it is the product ID to which the item ID is mapped to. Then we have our second argument, which is the table array where you want the search to happen. In our case, that table is the inventory product data worksheet starting from column B till column G. The last argument of the VLOOKUP function is the column index. In our case, when we are trying to look for the unit cost price, our column index would be starting from B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Hence, our column index to fetch the unit cost price becomes 6. And then we have an option to either pass 0 or pass 1. For exact match, please enter false or 0 in this argument. Then press the enter. We can see that the unit cost price has been populated as 65. Let us quickly apply VLOOKUP to fetch the brand name also. Now here again, the argument which is the lookup value would be the product ID to which the item ID is mapped, and then we pass the array, which is the same array starting from column B to column G in the inventory product data worksheet, and then passing the column index. We can count the column index in the given array by assigning column index as 1 to the first column and then counting it till we reach the required column. So product ID becomes our first column, then second column, third column, fourth column and fifth column. Since we are looking for brand name, column index 5 becomes the argument in the VLOOKUP function. After entering the column index as 5, for exact match, pass 0 or false. For approximate matches, pass 1 or true. Since we are looking for exact match, in this case, we will pass the argument as 0. Then press enter and we get the brand name as Dairy India. So let us quickly verify the output here. We have the product ID as product ID 1001. In the product ID 1001, the brand name is Dairy India and the unit cost price is 65. It matches with the output which we are getting here. Let us apply the same formula for the other item IDs. Now, in item ID 1002, we are getting the value as 61 and again the brand name as Dairy India. Let us quickly verify this. Item ID 1002 is mapped to the product ID 1002. When we go to the inventory product data sheet, the product ID 1002 has unit cost price as 61 and the brand name is Dairy India, which again matches with the output being shown here. This is how we can verify the other item IDs as well and get the corresponding unit cost price and brand name for a given item ID. Before we move to our next function, which is Hlookup, let us understand the difference between lookup and VLOOKUP function. The lookup function can perform lookup in horizontal and vertical both ways, whereas VLOOKUP can only do a vertical search. In the case of lookup, it works on approximate matches, whereas in the case of VLOOKUP, it gives us an option of exact match and approximate match. Lookup function needs sorted data, whereas in the case of VLOOKUP and an exact match, data can be unsorted as well. In case of approximate match, yes, the data should be sorted as in the case of lookup. In case of lookup, the output value or column in a given array would always be the last column of that search array. Whereas in the case of VLOOKUP, column index decides from which column the output value has to be picked. Now, moving towards our next function, which is Hlookup. Before we get into the details, let us again review the Hlookup function description. Hlookup looks for the value in the topmost row in the table or array and then returns the value in the same column from the row specified. H in Hlookup stands for horizontal. Hence, Hlookup performs horizontal search. It is used in a scenario where the data is captured in the rows. Let us discuss and understand the arguments of the Hlookup function. The first argument in the Hlookup function is the lookup value. It is the input value for which you want to perform the search or lookup. Then we have the second argument, which is table array. This is the table from where you want the output value to be retrieved. The third parameter is the row index, which defines the row from where the output value has to be picked, and then we pass the arguments for exact and approximate matches in a similar fashion which we did in the VLOOKUP function as well. Now, this is our sample data which we will be using to understand Hlookup and its arguments. We can see here the data is organized in a row manner. The problem statement here is that given a brand name, can we get its inventory details? Now, let us apply the Hlookup function to get the total inventory of brand Indian milk. To apply Hlookup, select the cell, double-click the cell, enter equal to, then enter function name, which is Hlookup in our case, and pass the arguments required. Our first argument will be the lookup value, which in our case is present in cell B7. The second argument is the array where the lookup value will be searched for. The third argument is the row index. So in our case, given the data we have, for understanding purpose, let us assign them the row number. Brand is row number 1, inventory quantity is row number 2, and inventory in value is row number 3. So if we want to get the total inventory quantity, we will pass row index, which is row number 2, as per the array or table selected. For exact match, our next argument would have value as false, and in the case of approximate match, the last argument will have the value as true. On similar lines, we can get the total inventory value for the brand Indian Milk. We will use the HLOOKUP function again. The input or the lookup value is the value present in cell B7. Next argument is the data table where the lookup has to happen. The third argument is the row index from where you want to retrieve the value. In our case, we want the inventory value, total inventory value, hence our row index will be 3. Then the last argument, if we want an exact match, it should have a value as false. If we want an approximate match, it should have a value as true. Then press enter. We can quickly verify the total inventory and total inventory value for Indian milk. The Indian milk details are present here. Inventory quantity is 10 as per the given data, and inventory value is 575 as per the given data. Let us try with a different brand name. So we selected Dairy India. Dairy India data is present here. The inventory quantity matches with the inventory quantity of the data, and total inventory value, which is 2235, matches with the inventory value in the data table. Thank you for watching this video. We will meet again in the next session to understand more Excel functions. I would like to thank you all for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and press the bell icon for future notifications.